part 4 of our exploration series. And in this video, we're going to be just exploring Kerbin, exploring this planet, discovering new biomes, and collecting as much science as we can just to get it out of the way, but also because it's fun to explore. That's what this game's about, right? And why waste this planet? Now, like I always do, I want to start off by just catching everyone up of what has happened since our previous video as far as making new Kermanauts. I have put through the ringer, the Kermanaut Training Academy, Kevin's Kermanaut Academy. I put through that training like a half dozen, no, actually more like 9 classes of pilots and engineers and scientists. So I basically like doubled the amount of Kerbals that we can use here in this exploration mode, which is a good thing, and I'll talk about why here in a second. It is becoming a routine thing to actually lose Kerbals in training. We actually lost 2 at the very last training event of Phase 1 for pilot school. Paddock and Sisby both failed to touch down the single spider lander, or whatever you want to call it. I guess I actually named the vehicle the Grasshopper. In both situations, the pilots got their throttling confused. So what a coincidence, right? It's almost like the same person is controlling both of these Kerbals. They tried to eject, both of them tried to eject, but because they had already throttled up the lander itself, it forced the escape pod into the ground, killing both. And then Patrick A., who was supposed to be a pilot, actually beefed it on the takeoff of his very first training event, and somehow ejected while vertical and managed, or I guess the seat would have pushed him horizontal, but it's a good thing he did because somehow it allowed him to survive it, even though the ejection seat didn't work like it's supposed to in this case. So yeah, like I said a minute ago, it's good that we have a lot more Kerbals to play with, because building the first plane, given the parts that I have, it was quite the challenge to get it right, to get it flight worthy. And I actually put together like a 10-minute compilation of me just working on this thing for hours, trying to get it balanced, to get it even just to lift it off the runway. Unfortunately, in the scheme of things, I accidentally deleted the video, so I don't have that compilation of just repeated crashes and just killing Kerbanaut or I guess pilot after pilot. And I was doing engineer as well. We lost a lot of engineers because I would fly both pilot and engineer when I was test flying this thing. And man, it was the meat grinder. This machine, it should be, I call it the Blackbird, but I think I'm going to rename it to the meat grinder, or the Kerbal genocider or something, because we lost 5 or 6 Kerbals just trying to build this thing. And I did build it with escape systems, but even designing the escape systems led to the deaths, while developing it, led to the deaths of a few Kerbals itself. But it's a good thing we did, because I'll show you here in a few minutes that it does come in handy later. But after several hours of perfecting this vehicle the best I can, given the parts I have, it was time to take off with both pilot and scientists, 2 crew, or 1 crew at a time of 2 Kerbals, and just each flight given its own section of the map to go explore, just to go find some POI, some points of interest, so we could do some more science. And let me tell you, it's a big planet. It's like finding a needle in a haystack to try to find these POIs, and I don't think there's many of them in the entire Kerbal system, let alone Kerbin. There might only be 1, maybe 2, I don't know. I didn't want to spoil it for myself, so I never looked into it. I refuse to ever look into it. I want to find them by myself, just like a treasure hunter. So there is no spoiler alert, because I'll just tell you right up front, even though I spent like 2 days searching, I did not find any. It's a huge planet, even when you have it at 4 times speed. And I built this plane so I could travel efficiently long distances, about half the globe, maybe not quite half the globe, maybe 40% of the globe, round trip. And I still didn't find any. Now, I kept an average altitude about, I don't know, 5,000 to 6,000 AGL, maybe even sometimes 7,000 AGL as my average. It's almost impossible, I would guess, to find any POIs. I don't know how big any points of interest would be. Points of interest being like, some sort of unique landscape or something like that the devs put in as like an Easter egg. I managed to do this using a good probably 10 mission flights or so, and I covered all the surrounding continents, probably doing 2 to 3 flights for each continent. Didn't find anything, and had to eject twice actually on 2 different missions. So the Blackbird, or the meat grinder as I'm gonna call it, when you're flying at 4 times speed and you do a really sharp turn at a downward angle so you have more momentum, I guess, it can snap off one of the tail fins where the elevators are. And if you do that, it's unrecoverable. This thing can easily go into a flat spin, even when the whole thing's intact. So this happened twice. Both times I had to eject, like you should be seeing right now in the layover. And in both circumstances, both Kerbals survived. So even though it cost me several Kerbals just to integrate the escape system into the plane, it did end up saving lives. Oh, and we did lose a crew, unfortunately, when I landed on the beach to collect science. But then when I took off, the plane was too front heavy because we emptied out the fuel because it was toward the end of the mission, and couldn't take off, and we lost them.
Lift off. We're not lifting off.
But now that I've basically covered what I can given the plane, now we're going to move on to the second method, which is building a rocket to go to orbit and then just dropping pods with pilots and scientists in them to collect biome science that way. But first, we're going to purchase new tech because I got 129 to spend. And we're going to go to reaction control systems and purchase this so we can have like an RCS ACS system. Got it. Power management, definitely want to get some more of that. And we could get more. We need 50 for that, so we'll just go with small payloads in case we want to do any probing, which, spoiler alert, we will in the next video. So into mission control we go, because we're heading into orbit, and while we go into orbit for the first time, we can do a mission for it, and we'll also be collecting different biome sciences at the same time, but we'll get to that. It's time to get extraterrestrial. Orbit, here we come. Establish an orbit around Kerbin with an apoapsis less than 300 clicks and a periapsis greater than 70 clicks. 60 science as a reward. Nice. Track mission, mission brief. Greetings, Director Kev. The day has finally arrived. All our research has culminated in a single shining moment. I have finally perfected the strongest cup of coffee. Well, I did do it with a bit of help from Newton, our intern. You've got to try, okay, come on, man. The Mojito MK1. 3 shots of espresso, 10 sugars, and a teeny tiny splash of foam. I've had 2 in the last hour. It's miraculous. I no longer require sleep. From here, the snack department will be taking over development. Now on to our agenda. Thank you. It's time to finally orbit Kerbin. All our attempts to orbit our beloved blue marble have resulted in what Tarmac Henry calls go boom. But how hard can it be to turn sideways? Maybe we just need more coffee. Your objective is to establish an orbit around Kerbin with an apoapsis less than 300 clicks and a periapsis greater than 70 clicks. The sweet spot is where your orbit doesn't leave Kerbin, but also doesn't dip into Kerbin's atmosphere. While we at Mission Control are big fans of learning by doing, we are also aware that new craters could harm our chances of making the cover of Giant Lawns Weekly. If you want to brush up on your spaceflight basics, you can always hop over to the training center and take the Orbits Are Weird refresher course. Orbits are weird, going up then sideways and falling forever, too many directions. Make sure you have the latest parts from the R&D center and look both ways before crossing. See you soon, Director Kev. Over and out. Okay, into the VAB we are to build our first orbital rocket, and because we'll be doing science in different biomes, we'll be doing multiple runs at this for different biomes, for different science collection. We're going to be bringing a scientist along with the pilot, so we're going to need 2 pods. Once again, yay for us. Execute time lapse. All right, we are not going into an equatorial orbit. We are going to try to go into a polar orbit. So we're going to aim this puppy north, and we're going to land it at the North Pole. Why? Because these capsules are very prone to rolling down hills and mountains, as we've seen. So the first science I want to collect is from the North Pole because it is pretty flat up there. So we're going to aim for up here. But first thing we need to do is get into an orbit. We'll circle once, and then we'll come back. We'll do a deorbit burn, and we'll land right in there. All right, let's go ahead and throttle up just over halfway with our core booster. Music on. Nice, we have a countdown now. 8, she's away. So we're not going to have enough fuel to actually get to orbit. We're going to see how far this takes us. We might not even have enough to get to the polar caps there. So maybe we will just do science out here in the field somewhere. We will have enough to get to space, though. Make sure of that. That's good planning on my part, clearly. It's a good way for us to test out our subsystems, I guess. Man, I really misjudged the amount of fuel we needed. These 2 pods are a lot heavier than I remember in KSP1. That's right. It's the way SpaceX does it, right? Trial and error. So we'll try to keep these 2 these two vessels together. Alright. And if I have to separate them, I will. Well, the good news is that we are in space, barely, just 1,000 meters into space, but it's enough to give these guys the status of Kermanaut. The bad news is, looks like we're going to land in the mountains, so they might not live to accept the awards. And I noticed that my RCS isn't working either. Maybe it's because these things aren't attached to any pods. That we'll try moving them for the next mission. We're gonna try arming just his. Okay. Okay, so apparently I need to push the spacebar one more time. There we go. Now they're all armed. If I press it again, they'll decouple. But I just want to hit the 1 key. The 1 key should cut the drogue chutes that should be deploying soon if the capsule's not going too fast. And at the same time, while it cuts the drogue chutes, separate the capsules. If it's going too fast, then I'm just gonna have to press the space bar and decouple these things so the drogues can deploy. And I'm gonna have to make that judgment call soon. If they're not separated by, say, sea level 20,000 feet, let's go ahead and roll it so the chutes are facing upward. No, it looks like we might. Oh, yay! They deployed. Awesome. Even one of the main chutes deployed. How about that? And it doesn't look like we're going to be landing in a valley. Looks like we're aiming for the top of that mountain down there. Good luck, gentlemen. Alright. This one didn't deploy because I did it manually, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to cut these chutes either when this chute deploys. Okay, that'd be now. So we'll go ahead and do it. See if I can tip this a little bit. There we go. It didn't cut these chutes. Cut. Cut. I must have forgot to put them in the at least his chute deployed. I must have forgot to put the cut drogue chutes on this capsule in the lookout. And the shortcut. These things didn't eject either. What is up with that? Alright, I think that's bugs. We're gonna blame bugs for that. So we're back on a hill. Can I jettison this heat shield? No, I cannot. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck. Oof. Well, we lost our science pod. It's such a long way down. Sorry, Bob. Oh, we just lost Bobby. Can we click on him? can't click on him. We're gonna lose him too. Find out. Maybe he can bail out. Well, we lost Bob, but at least we were able to save R's and C. There goes his capsule. You're stranded, bro. We're going to send you a pickup. Okay, so all the male legends, Jeb, Bill, and Bob, are now perished. So that's too bad. But technically, R's and C has become a Kermanaut. Congratulations, bro. Even though you failed that mission, I'm gonna give you at least the title, and you are now an officer. Let's go all caps. You're now an officer. I'm not giving you that mission count for anything. The highest you've been now is space. Okay. All right, you know, I'm not even going to try to get to the North Pole. I'm just going to try to get in orbit and complete this mission. All right, we'll worry about the biome science after this. One thing at a time, I guess. That dual capsule was just, it was too much weight to worry about it. Okay, that's an altitude of 87,000 meters. We'll get a little bit closer to our apogee before we use the rest of our fuel on our first stage. Should almost be there. Oh, look at that. We don't have our trajectory line. There we go. All right. We made orbit. Good for us. And it's a good thing we have a little bit of propellant left in our second stage here so we can do a deorbit burn. Otherwise, we'd be stuck up here forever. So now the question becomes, where do we want to re-enter at? There's a big old crater. I flew around that. Didn't find any POIs there. Ooh, look, it's the Mun. We'll be going there soon enough. Alright, retrograde. And burn. That'll work. Decouple. And there's the Kerbal Space Center. Send out the ships, guys. I'm gonna need you. I'm not swimming back. Wow, it didn't ablate anything off of the shield. That drug chute must have done its job. Let's go ahead and get ready to jettison that, because we're not going to need it. Do it about 5,000 meters above the sea. How about that? After it unreefs. Splash. Okay, mission control. Let's collect our 60 science. There you are, you magnificent magnet of scientific study. You did amazing. We had a watch party to celebrate. There was an exact replica of your vessel made out of cake. It was surprisingly flammable. You might have noticed that a new set of missions are now available. You see, if the main missions are canon, these contracts are the adventurous spin-offs. Some of these challenges bring in more science, others exist to keep our part manufacturers happy. We can't afford to turn anyone away. You do know this is the first space program on Kerbin, right? Now that you've conquered orbit, it's time to visit our nearest neighbor, the Mun. Come back here when you're ready to go. Over and out. Okay. So we got Mun or bust. That's obviously going to the moon. Going green. I wonder what that is. I think we're gonna make sure we have a. Oh, that's easy. That's gonna be done on the ground. We'll do that sometime. An EVA while in Kerbin orbit. Oh, okay, cool. Let's go to the R&D center and spend our science. Well, we should probably spend it on Mun landing stuff because that's where we'll be heading soon. Alright, so with KSP2, it turns out there's an option to go to the trip planner and actually figure out how much Delta V is required for your rocket to go into Kerbin orbit. However, they differentiate between Kerbin and Kerbal, and I'm not familiar with the difference between the two. Alright, so I'm not exactly sure what these numbers mean. However, if I were to guess, I would say I do have enough Delta V to get to orbit with this rocket, so we can actually start landing science pods around Kerbin in different biomes to collect more science. We'll find out. This is going to be kind of like a more trial and error, I guess. We're actually using the Mun landing pod for our science module. And I forgot to strap the Science Junior onto this, but we'll do that in the future. The MUN module is actually a lot less weight. Well, not a lot less, but it's less weight than a second tin can capsule. So it's a little bit easier to get to a polar orbit with this thing. And that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for the Arctic, the North Pole. Do some science there. I don't think at an altitude above 70,000 meters, which is the minimum needed for orbit around Kerbin, that you can actually make out any points of interest on the ground. I think it's too far away. Otherwise, that would be how I would search for POIs around smaller moons and planets. Oh, Richlow's dead. He gone blowed up. Apparently the heat shields don't protect things wider than them themselves, which is actually, I like that, because in KSP1 you could get away with using heat shields that are actually smaller than what they should be. So we're going to end up touching down on the North Pole if this goes, the rest of this goes well enough. But we won't be doing any science because our pilot here, Frozon, is a scientist. Apparently using SAS helps to stop capsules from rolling down hills, so that's helpful knowledge to have. Richlow is deceased. Rest in pieces. Alright, I went ahead and made some minor adjustments to the same rocket, and we're going to try this again, this time with the Science Junior pod. Oh, those drogue chutes came out just in time. We were about to reach peak heat. And touchdown. Temperature in this area fluctuates above and below zero much more than expected. Environmental samples are all within expected parameters, but the mystery goo is shivering. Get Valentina here, our scientist, to do some EVA samplage of the surface of this snow. Make a snowman, maybe. The ice and snow samples indicate nearly pure water with almost no saline or trace elements. This whole area is perfect for making snow kerbals. Excellent work. Strucco is very impressed by how easy it was to leave the safety of the vessel, so much so that they've canceled their EVA strut program. The company rep told us it would be a crime to inhibit such beautiful recklessness. Honestly, I think our demonstration made them question their career choices. I still think there's something to the idea of connecting the astronaut to their vehicle. I wish there was some other way to do it than with a rigged tube of aluminum. Oh well. Thanks for the science. Okay, so to finish this video out, I went ahead and did 4 more missions just like that around Kerbin and what I thought were different biomes. However, half of them I already had science for, so I only collected a little bit more science, but still, it was nice to get to see the beautiful landscapes in these different regions. And back to R&D one last time to purchase a few more things before we move on to the next objective, the next mission. Definitely want to get some more science parts so we can collect science more quickly. So we'll go with this one. 74 left. We'll go ahead and do... yeah, let's go with basic docking so we can dock if we need to. Because we're going to head to the moon, or the mun. And we're going to do that in the next part. Part 5 coming at ya.